It is the Fulhamish podcast, your independent voice of Fulham FC. My name's Sammy James. Welcome to the show. Today we are looking ahead to Saturday's game against Nottingham Forest. Back at Craven Cottage, it feels like an age, but we have two home games in a row, both Saturday, 3 o'clock, just as the weather's getting better as well. Maybe we are in for a glorious February. Also, we'll have the final word on our win over Wigan and reaction to that cup draw against Manchester United away. Jack Collins is off today, doing bigger and better things, presumably. So Dan Cooke has stepped in. Hello.
Hello. How are we doing?
Good, thank you. Love to have you here in the studio.
I love it. It's so exciting.
How are you?
Good. I mean, this is my second in-studio appearance, both after cup games against rubbish teams who we have also played rubbish against, and I feel a little bit like Stephen Benda.
God, that was an early mention for Stephen Benda, the comedy roast of Stephen Benda, as I now title Monday's podcast. Poor old Stephen Benda. Let's come on to that first, actually, as you've brought it up. I listened to Monday's pod, and I wasn't at Wigan, and whilst I was a bit concerned by the mistake that, was ended up being quite clearly offside from a Wigan perspective. Whilst I am concerned about the, performance of Stephen Benda as a number two, and I actually did agree with your statement that if Bernd Leno got injured for the season, I think it would be I think you can kiss an FA Cup run and certainly getting in Europe goodbye. I think Fulham would be fine and would finish kind of mid-table. I think it would be a hugely detrimental thing. But if you were a championship team and he went there, I feel like he's not that bad as was maybe indicated on the Monday pod.
Maybe. I don't know. Maybe it's because we're doing that comparison of how secure and safe we always feel with Bernd Leno. And then it's such a stark comparison when you see Stephen Benda come into the game. And maybe that's a bit unfair on him. But also the two teams that stick out in terms of poor performances. I mean, even Watford, he didn't really have to do much, so he didn't stand out as much. He was still a bit flappy. But I thought Freddie Woodman for Preston looked a more assured and composed keeper than him, as did Sam Tickle for Wigan, who is a young up-and-coming keeper. He's a League One keeper, though. That's my worry, is they looked like better goalkeepers than him, so I'm not entirely sure what his standard is. And we saw him in the Championship, and he did look like a good keeper. He played well against Fulham.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's by virtue of not playing very much. He just looks nowhere near good. Now, I don't know if I would say he's a Championship level keeper based on what I've seen so far this season.
There is something about goalkeeping, isn't there? It's aura. And it's quite hard to define. Whereas, you can maybe say about a striker, it's their heading ability, it's their finishing, and maybe sometimes someone that doesn't look like they're going to do too much can actually sometimes be a bit of a world beater as a striker. But something about goalkeeper, isn't there? And even going right down into kind of Sunday League, we've all played against a goalkeeper that you're like, oh yeah, if I come up, anyone comes up against you, you're not going to save a single thing. And we've also come up against goalkeepers, and sometimes it's just the way that they, they're presented or they look big, and you're just like, oh god, you're going to be a nightmare today. And I mean, you're a goalkeeper yourself at a very different level. We have to stress, but
you didn't need to bring that up.
I do think there's just an element of aura, and I would be worried going in. And I feel like the best example of a goalkeeper who just lacked aura and it felt like you'd be able to score against them every week was when Danny Ward was in goal for Leicester that season. And you just felt like you played Leicester, you're like, well, we're definitely going to score today because they got Danny Ward in goal. And that is the concern. I mean, I just hope we're not speaking something into existence.
Yeah, I think Danny Ward's a cracking example because it's not just that lack of confidence that you have then in your own back line. The opposition sniff these moments out. And the fact that Wigan spotted an opportunity to just take pot shots from 25 yards. And they weren't doing that in the first half. It was after they realised that he just looked a little bit suspect for the goal. I still don't think he can save that, but he just didn't, the aura, he just didn't look like he was going to get anywhere near it, and he didn't. And so if they've latched onto that, other teams will, and other teams will do it quicker because they've seen what he looks like in goal. And so, yeah, ultimately, what do we do if Bernd Leno gets struck down? There is nothing we can do. We're just gonna have to deal with it.
Yeah.
And we could have some absolutely chaotic games of football, because I think it would require Fulham to play way more on the front foot and try and keep teams as far away from their goal as possible.
Yeah.
But
Outscore.
it would be going into games trying to win 4-3. But yeah, fingers crossed. I still think, like, if we're talking about Bernd Leno, he has been immense again this season. And I think he was so good that first season and he got loads of plaudits. And he maybe has tailed off slightly, but we never speak about him because he's just so consistent and he's so reliable.
Yeah.
And to have kept that level of performance up for 3 seasons is with what, 1, maybe 2 like errors that led to a goal in there. We're lucky.
The thing is about it was an embarrassment of riches having Marek Rodak as a backup goalkeeper last year. It's really hard to expect, unless you are one of the big 6, to have 2 really brilliant. I mean, look, even Spurs, right? They had Ben Foster as their backup, who clearly wasn't good enough, and they've had to bring in someone at the last second, Antonin Kinski, and despite a good debut, we're now seeing that he's not really up to it. It's really, really hard to make sure that you've got a great backup goalkeeper, and there aren't many clubs that you would argue have a fantastic one,
especially when you consider the number of games we play.
Yeah,
in comparison to a team that's playing in Europe. That's a whole extra chunk of minimum 6 to 8 games.
Yeah.
That opens an avenue for a second choice keeper to play in. We don't have that. We've got as far as we go in the Carabao Cup until we start caring, and the same with the FA Cup. So that it could be 2 games across an entire season effectively.
I feel like the only way of maybe remedying this is if you have a great young goalkeeper going out on loan, but with that recall option in the contract. So if you enter into a bad situation, at least you can bring them back and give them some games. But of course, like, clubs loaning a goalkeeper aren't going to be massively happy with that clause, are they? Oh, great. Well, I've got a good goalkeeper, but I could lose him any time that Bernd Leno gets an injury. Like, we laugh at Marcus Bettinelli being Chelsea's 4th choice goalkeeper. I mean, someone I think it was Elizabeth that mentioned it on the Monday pod. Like, I'd take him back. As if he wants to be back up over there, 3rd choice, 4th choice, like, surely 2nd choice at Premier League Fulham is relatively appealing.
Probably, but also, like, when was the last time he played any football? Like, I'm actually not convinced that he would stack up that well against Stephen Benda, because at least Stephen Benda's played football over the past 3 years. Marcus Bennett, I cannot remember the last time I saw him on a football pitch. Yeah. So like that's the flip side. I think you've got to go either of the 2 extremes, probably, don't you? Someone very experienced, back into their career, happy to sit on the bench and be number 2 for a whole season, but ready to step up.
The Pascal Zubabula role.
The Zubabula role. I was thinking of more recent examples in my head, but yes, perfect example. Or the other end of the spectrum, someone young who you bring through, I think, and Marek Rodak was perfect for that for a period of time. And unfortunately for Marek, when he got his chance, he was always doing pretty well in the Championship, and then we needed to upgrade every time it came to playing in the Premier League. But you go down the other angle, and you're still susceptible if you've got a young keeper, I think, coming through, because it's such a tough thing to be a keeper under the age of like 24, 25. I don't know, it's a hard role to play. But I think at the moment we've just sort of got someone who doesn't seem like they're going to go in either direction. They're not super experienced, they've not got lots of potential, and they're also not that good. Which feels harsh, but and as long as Bernd Leno doesn't get injured, it's not going to. We don't care. Like, it's not a massive problem, but we're just saying that there could be a problem here.
Yeah. Other than that, obviously it was a decent cup win against Wigan. I agreed with a lot of the points on the Monday pod where it was like, okay, yes, we weren't always 100% impressive, but we got the job done, and that is the most important thing. And whether you win 6-0, whether you win 2-1, and whether it's convincing or unconvincing, you're in the hat for the 5th round, and it matters little. And also, it was good. We managed to rest all of our big hitters other than Timothy Castagne, and they didn't have to play an awful lot of football. The reward on Monday night was a tie away at Manchester United. Now, I have to caveat with what I'm about to say with that. I was watching the draw. I suffered through the one show. And then I did say an expletive when we drew Manchester United.
So
I have to caveat that I wasn't instantly like, yes. I was obviously like, oh, and I was just hoping for Cardiff at home.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah.
But I think the more I think about it now, no great movie doesn't have some jeopardy. No great tale doesn't come without some adversity. There is a narrative here. There is an opportunity for Fulham to do something really, really incredible and really, really special. I know it's scary, and it was not my first choice by any stretch of the imagination, but I think this is an opportunity for Fulham to do something great. And if we're going to win the cup, we had to go and beat someone and do something impressive at some point. You weren't going to go and win the cup by drawing Wigan, Watford, Plymouth, Cardiff, Burnley, and suddenly getting a final against Preston.
It would be good though.
It would be amazing, but
yeah, there is like a poetry here, and I was the same as you. Like as soon as they came out as the home tie, I was just like no, and it felt predictable. I would feel a lot better about it if it was a home tie.
Do you think? See,
I know we're better away from home. I know, and
United are better away from home. At home, you've got to look at their record at home. It is atrocious.
But it's our record against them. This is what I was going to get onto.
Does that matter?
Well, I think it's like an annoyingly consistent trend we're seeing over 3 years since we've been back in the Premier League, that we've beaten them once, and every other game bar a draw. So I did the numbers. I think we played them 9 times in recent memory. 7 losses, 6 of them by 1 goal. 6 of them with goals that came after the 75th minute.
Yeah,
that's our record, and that's across what, 2 managers, potentially 3 managers, who all played wildly different types of football and were all pretty rubbish. And we just have an annoying consistency of playing better than them and getting nothing out of it. And that's my frustration. I don't know. It feels like there's no way we should have lost 7 of those 9 games.
No, of course. It should be the other way round, if anything.
We've been the better team in pretty much all of them.
But does that not give you hope? And it did, last season we did go to Old Trafford and we did win. I mean, we made our very best not to win it with that 90th minute Maguire goal.
I took my top off.
Yeah. Yep. Not for the Maguire goal.
No, not for the Maguire goal. No.
For the Iwobi goal.
Yeah, for the Iwobi goal.
That would be weird. Why is he getting quite so... What's he doing? We've just conceded a late equaliser. He's taking his top off. I think that I would have definitely not rather drawn City. I know they're bad, but I think Bournemouth. I would rather have got United than Bournemouth.
Villa. I would rather have had United than Villa.
Forest. Even Ipswich or Wolves away, I think would be on a... If you try to take the recent matches against United out and the emotion of that out, I genuinely think it's not as bad a draw as initially it felt like.
Yeah, there are definitely worse games, and then I think there are other ones that are more like bigger banana skins in there as well, where you're going into a ground where fans are right up for it. It really matters. They're fighting at the bottom end of respective divisions. I was thinking Plymouth away, I thought would have been a horrible tie. It would have been fun.
Yeah,
for us to go to, but those sort of ties in the FA Cup are big banana skins, where I didn't think the Wigan one was going to be, because you get a 50% capacity crowd. There's not much in that, but you turn up somewhere like Plymouth and they sell out the whole stadium and they're right on top of you. That's horrible. And I think, but when you go to Old Trafford, I imagine between now and then they're not going to have massively improved. I don't think fan sentiment is going to have moved a huge amount towards this team.
Yeah.
It's just our record against them that is really bugging me. And the other thing that's bugging me is, I think, totally aside from performance on the pitch, I don't think it opens an option for Fulham fans to go to this game, because as we saw with Leicester, we're prone to getting charged through the nose to get a ticket for this game. And I think that's the other thing about it.
Yeah, that there is that element. It will be, unless someone has a change of heart somewhere, it will be over £50 a ticket. And so Leicester fans, it was hard to know if it was a boycott from Leicester fans. I think they tried to say it was. They took 1,000, which obviously, Leicester are a big team. They would normally take way more than 1,000 to a cup match, no matter how they were doing. I guess it just didn't really feel like much of a protest because it was a sold out little section. So it maybe just, was it effective? Don't know. Yeah, that is a bit crap, and it's just a bit annoying. I think there is a bit of a I've seen quite a lot of people get this slightly wrong online. I think it used to be that both the home club and the away club decide on the ticket prices jointly. It is now the case that the home team decide. The away side has no influence on it. 40% of the gates does go, though, to the away team. So 40% goes to home, 40% goes to the away, and then I think maybe 15 to 20%, something like that, goes to the FA fund. I don't know. Something like that, or goes to the prize fund. I don't 100% know how it works. So it is United's choice. What I don't actually 100% know is if Fulham can subsidise it. But I think,
for one, it's not going to happen.
It's just not going to happen.
But two, is like, as much as, because I had the same thought, I don't think any club should in that situation, because ultimately the main beneficiary of that still ends up still partially being the home club. I know that the split's the same, but it gives them a justification to charge that amount of money. And instead of turning around and saying, no, that's not okay, sort of being like, oh, it's all right, we'll cover some of it. I don't think that solves a problem. But I think it negatively impacts us as fans and also the team. Because whilst Leicester did really admirably in that game and put in a sort of Fulham-esque performance against Manchester United where you look good and ultimately lose, it can't help when you walk out and you look at a, 76,000 capacity stadium, and you see in like the top right-hand corner a tiny little segment of 1,000 fans.
Yeah.
Mentally, I just don't think that can help.
No. I mean, I'd like to... It depends what day. So at the moment, at time of recording, they haven't just said when the game's going to be. It can't be Friday because United play on the Wednesday beforehand. It can't be Monday, Tuesday because United then play in the Europa League. So it will be a weekend game. ITV, it's so set that ITV will pick this because it's United and they just want the ad revenue. So we'll see. I would be very happy if it was like a Saturday tea time match, but it is obviously daunting, but I do think that we can go there and get a victory. And what I was saying to Yasmin before the podcast, I would rather face United now rather than at Wembley. Because I do think that this United side, it's weird. They're rubbish, but they've got kind of big game energy. Yeah. And I think with their experience and players at Wembley, they would just have something that beats us in a game. You saw even a few years ago, they beat that brilliant Brighton team on penalties in the semi-final. I think something similar would happen to Fulham. I think if you're going to beat United, I think it has to be something like kind of a little bit obscure, like the 5th round. It's not like the biggest game of their season. At Old Trafford as well, because you look at their home versus away record, it generally is that they are all right on the road, and at home they are absolutely woeful.
Yeah. The other thing that I think is a benefit is it's not a grey area tie of what strength lineup do you put out. This isn't one where I think, if Marco is genuinely serious about he wants to win the FA Cup,
yeah,
which I think he is. I don't think we should read necessarily too much into that Wigan team. This isn't a game where he's going to and ah, should it be Stephen Benda in goal? Should it be Bernardo? Should it be Jorge Cuenca or should it be Calvin Bassey? This is a difficult game against Premier League opposition. It means it pretty much has to be our first choice 11. So I think that's a good thing because, again, like if it was Wolves away, I still think he might have tried to tweak things here and there with still an eye on the league. I don't think you can do that at Old Trafford. I think he just has to go strongest 11.
Yeah, and I for what it's worth, I think he should be going strongest 11 no matter who it was.
Oh no, of course.
In the like I was a little bit on Saturday when I saw that lineup. I did think gulp Preston away. Just don't. It would be so and imagine how angry we would be today if we hadn't beaten Wigan when you looked at the FA Cup and how it's opened up slightly. I think we need to get tempered. There are still tough teams in this competition. It's not like Fulham now have a Portsmouth-like bye to the Cup.
It has opened up a lot, though. You look at the teams who are out. It's like, again, I do think we keep saying things like this though. Like we said it the first year we came up in the Premier League, where it's like we're not going to have as good an opportunity to get European football as this season because XYZ team have had a bad season. But again, it's happened this year. Again in the FA Cup, like Liverpool out, Chelsea out, Arsenal out. These teams are ones that if any of those came out, we'd all be looking at it just thinking, nah,
yeah,
we're done. So I think that it has massively opened up. And I was the same as you when that team sheet came out against Wigan. I was disappointed and very apprehensive. I was quite bullish going into that game. I didn't see it as an issue at all. But walking to the ground and I saw the 11, I was disappointed and then worried. And ultimately it was fine. But I agree. I think from now on, there can be no wavering from your best 11.
Yeah. All right, we're going to take a break there. Afterwards, we will look ahead to Forest on Saturday. Part 2 of the Fulhamish podcast. It is Sammy here with Dan Cooke on the Thursday Club. If you're heading to the Forest game this Saturday at Craven Cottage, make sure you pop into Craft Beer Co. either before or after the game. A beautiful family-run pub with a wide selection of fantastic craft beers. Such a unique selection. It is a perfect place. You know, it's at Hammersmith Broadway. If you're doing a little bar crawl down to the cottage, I'm telling you that Craft Beer Co. is the perfect place to start. So make sure you pop in there sometime on Saturday. Dan, Forest, this obviously is a really, really tough game. Forest have been flying this season. I think we should first address their cup game on Tuesday night. I mean, firstly, incredibly unfair for Forest, I think, that they had to play on Tuesday. I think, like, for me with the FA Cup, and I genuinely try not to be like, the game's gone, all games should be Saturday 3:00. I'm a grown up and I realise that ultimately television exists and we've got to move some of the kickoffs. I can just about understand Friday and Monday. I wouldn't have been happy if I was Palace having to go to Doncaster on a Monday night. But again, like, this is... Tuesday takes the biscuit.
Yeah.
If you were a Forest fan last night, you'd driven down to Exeter, and don't get if Fulham had got Exeter on a Tuesday night, I think we'd have all fancied that one because it would have been a new ground and we'd have been well up for it. If that had been suddenly scheduled for a Tuesday, if I was still in Exeter at 5 to 11, my head might have actually already be on Mars.
I saw someone tweet saying I think it was like 10:49. Is that the latest pass that has ever been played in an English football match? It's just before the final whistle went with extra time. Has a game ever gone on longer?
Apparently there was I think it might be Villa Chelsea or Villa Liverpool. Apparently a game in the early 2000s that didn't start till 9:00 due to a power failure. But I think honestly it was mental watching, because I watched City Madrid because like it was a way bigger game than Exeter Forest, and switched it on first of all 10 minutes added time. I'm like, oh, there's quite a lot going on here. Then obviously Taiwan Yuonyi gets absolutely clattered by the Exeter goalkeeper, so there's 24 minutes added time and then they finishes level, so then there's the extra 30 and then it goes to pens. I think for everyone's sake it was probably quite good it wasn't a Preston 16-15, because it actually would have finished about midnight had it been that. From a Fulham perspective, I guess the good thing here is, Dan, is that Forest made 10 changes for that match. Only Danilo started against Exeter and started their 7-0 win over Brighton. But they did have to bring on quite a lot of players for, in the end, quite a lot of time. Morgan Gibbs-White and Elliot Anderson, two of their best players, came on in the 70th minute. So ended up playing over an hour of football. In the end, Chris Wood had to come on for extra time. Nico Williams had to come on. Matt Sells came on after an hour to replace Carlos Miguel in goal. I think Carlos Miguel did pick up an injury, but he also did basically just gift Exeter 2 goals. So it seemed a little bit convenient. So all in all, this is relatively good news for Fulham, because those players will have got back late on Wednesday, whilst Fulham players were tucked up in their beds with a glass of Horlicks.
Nice. On that topic, I saw Dom Betts with a Bovril at Wigan. I thought that was worth.
Okay,
that was just a nice.
No, it's always good to update on these things.
I think it was. That's as much as you can really ask for, isn't it? Like, they were never going to put out their best 11. The other thing that I thought was handy, not great for them, but the pitch was atrocious. The pitch was dreadful. And so, like, putting minutes into legs on that pitch can't have helped those Forest players. I don't think you can read much into the game itself. It's much similar to most Premier League teams' FA Cup games against lower league opposition this round. Big rotation, got quite hairy, managed to get through it. But the fact that Gibbs White, I think in particular, coming on at that point, getting that many minutes into his legs, he had to do quite a bit of running.
It got clattered by turns for the red card. I thought he was injured at one point.
Yeah, there was a couple of heavy challenges in there as well. The turns one was pretty nasty. There was another one by the de facto left back for Exeter who went in over the top of the ball and it was very heavy on, I can't remember who. So it was perfect for Fulham. Like, that was as much as we could ask for. Do I think it has much of an impact on Saturday? Do you?
No.
I don't really think it. I think we're clutching a little bit. Like, there's still enough time. Like, teams are used to playing Tuesday, Saturday. It's not a huge. If it had been like Thursday, maybe, but it feels like enough time to recover. They'll have had today off probably, and they will have already had one eye on this game in their warm-ups on Monday. So I don't think it's going to have too much of a difference.
No. So, Forest. When we played them early in the season, Fulham were the first team to beat Forest, and for a long time, the only team to beat Forest. It was a weird game at the City ground. I think both teams, I think Fulham kind of played the perfect game, really. We actually didn't really let Forest get too much steam on the counter-attack, which is obviously their main tactic. Kind of silenced the City ground because it's such an intense atmosphere and just made the game quite dull, and then took advantage of the decision that came our way and held on really, really well. Not actually a very stereotypical Fulham performance based on what's then happened later on in the season.
Yeah, I think we learned our lesson from the back end of last season as well when we went up there and got totally run over in that first half. There wasn't actually that much gap between that game and then the one this season. So I think we'd learned. And as much as it doesn't lend itself to a great game of football to watch, I said it last week on the podcast, I think we've got to do something similar. We've got to try and make Forest make things happen. We've got to put a bit of onus on them. And I think the problem this Fulham team has that makes Forest like one of the worst teams I think we could face is that we don't look great when we're allowed to have lots of the ball against a team that sits back, soaks up pressure and then counters. And I think they're probably, at the moment, the best team at doing that in the Premier League. Like, defensively, they are exceptional. And then they've got the players in a really nice way to then be able to attack from that base, because you've got the excitement and the speed of Elanga, Hudson-Odoi, Gibbs-White, but you've also got the person who makes all of that work in Chris Wood.
Yeah.
Not just putting the ball in the back of the net, but allowing them to play around him in the build-up. So we can't let that happen because I think we'll get totally stung. Like, we're not set up well to defend against that. Maybe if we had João sitting and protecting, and we have had good results against them with him this side, but I don't think this team lends itself to playing our usual game against Forest, which makes me think we need to do something different.
Okay. Well, what is that thing that you would do differently?
I don't think it's a personnel thing. I think it's just a mentality shift. I think Forest are going to be so happy for us to have the ball. And if we're not careful, I think we get into that side to side, Bassey to Anderson, Anderson to Bassey, out to Robinson, back into the middle, back again. And if we let that happen, I just don't think we'll create very much, because depends if they go over the 2 or a 3. It doesn't really matter. But if it's 2, Milenkovic and Murillo are not going to get beaten in the air if we're consistently whipping crosses into the box. Add in Morato into that if they play a 3, same issue. We're not going to get any joy that way. And I think the way that we break them down is by catching them in the way that they catch other teams. And so it's a really difficult balance to find, because you're playing at home. You don't want Fulham sitting back against a team who, before this season started, you would say Forest at home's a must-win game.
Yeah.
It's hard to explain that we should maybe go out and play this game in a way that doesn't look like we're trying to win it as our tactic to win this game.
Yeah. But you have to, it's a chess match, right? You have to think, because so many sides, even the best sides in the Liverpool got done by them earlier in the season, have
twice pretty much.
Yeah, have tried to attack Forest and they just love it. They almost want you to do that. And so it's kind of it's going to be a bit cat and mousey. Obviously, they come into this game on like this mad run of sequence results. So obviously, excluding the cup result, but a 7-0 win over Brighton last time out. But before that, a 5-0 defeat to Bournemouth. And actually, the game before that, like nearly throwing away a 3-0 lead against bottom side Southampton. Only thanks to Ola Eamon did they not actually end up drawing that game 3-3. Drew the game before that against Liverpool. So this, I can't even work out where do you go with that? Like, I mean, the Brighton one was a case of, I think Forest played very well. They were very, very clinical, but towards the end, Brighton slightly fell apart and also played a very weird system with basically Hinshelwood being the only protection for that back four.
Yeah, but similarly, like the game they lost 5-0 the week before against Bournemouth should probably be prefaced with the fact that I don't necessarily think that was a 5-0 game either. Having watched that game back, it was, Forest had their chances and Bournemouth this time were unbelievably clinical. And that game could have finished 2-2, 3-3. And the fact that they lost 5-0, I think, was a massive outlier in what, if you like stacked up the chances in the XG, that would have been a very unlikely result. So I don't know, like how. Yeah, I agree with you. How do you read into those results? I don't know, but I think there's probably a trend there when you look at the teams that they've got results against, and then the way Bournemouth played against them, which was the intensity that Bournemouth bring. We saw it when we played them. It's all action. It's quick. It doesn't let your opponent settle, and I think that's exactly what Fulham need to do. I don't know if we can do it in the same way Bournemouth do, because Bournemouth do it with relentless running. And so they just try and outdo you. And I don't necessarily think we've got the players to do that. So it then lends itself to dropping a bit deeper and seeing if we can go in the other direction with Adama Traore out on the right, Alex Iwobi out on the left. I don't know.
Yeah. So in terms of personnel, I think we're fairly settled over the back four. Well, I mean, like, I think I'm still
the whole team.
I'm still banging the ECD up drum, but I think that is a drum that I am not going to that Marcus Silva's not going to come and share with me. So then Sasha and Sander, presumably.
Yeah.
Smith Rowe or Pereira?
I would have, so ahead of the Newcastle game, myself, I thought that was a game for Andreas Pereira, and I was surprised it was Smith Rowe. I thought he played fine, still does his disappearing act, his marking of opposition defenders when we've got the ball. Would love to see more from him. I'd go into this game, I'd say it probably feels to me like an Andreas Pereira game, because if we're going to try and give Forest the ball, you need people doing the work out of possession to win that ball back. And so if we're going to try and win the ball in dangerous areas, in the middle of the pitch and start counterattacks, that feels more like Pereira than it does Smith Rowe. The flip side of that is, if Fulham decide to go and take this game fully on and be like, sod it, we will have 65% possession, but we're going to defend brilliantly and we're going to create chances, then it has to be a Smith Rowe game, I think, if you're trying to unpick a defence.
Yeah.
But
also, Andreas, like, it feels to me that if this is a silver meritocracy and we're rewarding good performances, an assist in the Newcastle game with a wicked free kick. I know it was Muniz's touch, but it's really all about the free kick there from Andreas, and another brilliant assist against Wigan,
and a good performance in general. I thought he played well.
It does feel to me like a little bit like, well, Andreas maybe deserves a shot in the 10. And generally this season, the whole Sasha Sander Andreas pivot has been enormously successful. So I kind of can't believe I'm saying it, but I probably would go for Andreas if it was me. I think you're
just
right.
Regardless of how we like, whether we want to play the game on the front foot or.
No, obviously that comes into it, but I think probably we're more likely to try and play Forest at their own game a little bit here. I don't know. I just think based on if we're looking at form, like Smith Rowe has been given those chances in the last few weeks, hasn't really taken them, and Andreas kind of has, and he came on that whipped ball against Newcastle. It's just a little bit of the Andreas that we want to see more regularly, and I still don't think Andreas has been given that much of a shot in the 10 this season.
Yeah, he's been shunted into that 8 role, which has then led to all of us chastising him a little bit, hasn't it?
Yeah,
but also prefacing it with the fact we know it's not his best position. I don't disagree. I think it could be a Pereira game, and then you have the added bonus of having that impact sub
Yeah.
Smith Rowe. You know, if we are looking for a goal, if we do need someone to pick up that pocket of space on the edge of the area, to play that final pass, to get on the end of a final ball, then you've got that option.
Which I know is not the role that Smith Rowe wants to play. I know that
But he should
wants
play
to
better then.
Yeah, I realised that. But as you said, and also the one game where I think Smith Rowe did come off the bench was Ipswich, and he did have a bit of an impact when he came off the bench. He was kind of instrumental in particularly the second goal that Fulham scored and getting it up the pitch. So I would be up for that. Then on the wings, I don't think we've got an awful lot of choice. It doesn't feel like Willian's anywhere near fitness to be challenging, and even if he was, I think it's Iwobi's spot on the left and then Adama on the right.
I don't know what else you do. Like, that's our only options, no?
Yeah.
Like, he's not going to be Marshall Godot. So that's our two wingers at the moment. Until Willian gets up to fitness, that's what we've got to deal with. I guess the only argument is maybe someone says Cess, but like, I think that's too much change. Because if you play Cess, then Iwobi goes out to the right, and you also then lose your counter-attacking threat of Adama Traore.
Yeah.
So I think I would be so surprised if it wasn't just Iwobi and Adama.
And then up front, again, Muniz is in form. It is February. I feel like he's going to go with Jimenez, but I would like to see it be Muniz.
Really?
I just think a striker in form is too good an opportunity not to take advantage of that.
Last time Raul played, he scored. It's not like he's out of form.
No. He will go for Raul.
I think he will. And it depends on what you want. I really like Raul starting games because he brings a level of control and intelligence to our play. You know, he's very smart at the way he holds the ball up, and he's not lazy. He works incredibly hard. So it's not like it's a big trade-off from you lose the energy of Muniz with some like lethargy up top. He still puts in an incredible shift, Raul. And I don't think there's always need for Rodrigo's chaos. I think he brings a level of carnage to our attack, which at times, and where he's starting to learn how to become an impact sub, I think, is he brings on and he just messes things up. He just leaps into challenges, he wins headers, he just does things. And that creates a bit of chaos, but I don't know if that's something you want from the very start. If we're able just to grow into this game by picking out Raul, letting him hold the ball up, bring us into play, I think it always gives us quite a nice base to build off.
If we're playing, I guess you are right. We're having to play quite it's a chess match. I think we've talked about it. It's going to be a tactical battle out there. Chances might be at a bit of a premium for Fulham. It might have to be, it's a game maybe for a smart player, and Raul is Fulham's kind of smart striker, really, isn't he? Whereas Muniz, I think he's becoming smarter, but Raul just has that, I guess, like that experience. And I guess like the game against Arsenal is a good example of kind of one chance, one goal. Yeah. He can be that man. I mean, Raul's not the most prolific, but he sometimes, when you give him those opportunities and you say, this is going to be a game where you're going to get maybe one, maybe two chances to get a goal and you're going to have to take it. I do probably bank Raul to take those opportunities slightly more than Muniz. So yeah, you might have talked me around on this one.
I just also think that I don't know if Rodrigo will win a physical battle against those Forest centre-backs. And Raul won't either, but I think Raul's smarter and knows how to get round that challenge.
Yeah.
You know, so instead of just trying your heart out, trying to win headers you're never going to win, that ability to drop deeper, receive it into feet, and I just think he's better at that at the moment. And I still think that's something Rodrigo has improved at massively since he joined the club, but Raul is still better at it.
Yeah. Right, we should do some emails before we finish. Yeah. I like this one from Gerard Lyons about facing United in the Cup. He says, well, the good news is that we have beaten Manchester United in the FA Cup. The bad news is the last victory was in 1907-08. Since then, we have been knocked out of the cup 9 times by them. And what's just as bad is that I have seen 6 of those cup defeats. It started off well in 1905-06. We knocked them out 1-0 away in the second replay following 2 draws. In 07-08, we won 2-1 at home. Then it was 25-26 and a home 2-1 home defeat. Then the most famous, the Cup semi-final in 57-58, when post-Munich, the whole country wanted us to lose, and we did. 5-3 at Highbury after a 2-2 draw. In more recent times, I saw the two games in 79-80, 1-1 at home on a Tuesday evening, followed by a 1-0 on a Monday night at Old Trafford to a deflected shot. Yeah.
Tuesday evening FA Cup game back in the 70s. Game hasn't gone, has it?
Oh, no, it hasn't.
The game has just remained the same.
That's not so that Sam Matterface can waddle. No, I assume they had more practical reasons for that one. We missed a sitter apparently in that Old Trafford at a Monday night that even Vinicius might have scored. Sound familiar? He then says in 98-99 it was 1-0 defeat away with Keegan's third tier team. United played their first team and took no chances. Solarco missed a sitter in that too. I was there and we filled the away end. It was fantastic support on a Sunday afternoon. Then on to a succession of defeats in 0001, 03-04, 08-09, 12-13, and then the self-implosion in 22-23. Even we surely can't lose 3 times in a season to a terrible United team. Redemption in early March. Best from Gerrard. This amazing research.
It's a fantastic bit of research, and I don't want to be mean to Gerrard, but if I could maybe suggest he doesn't go, just give it. I know it's impressive that he's been to all of those games, but if he could maybe try something new. Is all I'm saying. Just give it a go. My biggest worry is that we're going to come out of this season having lost 3-0 on aggregate to Manchester United across 3 games of football. I don't think I'll recover from that.
No.
That's the grim viewpoint I've got. But I mean, the other thing that stands out there is how often have we pulled them since 2000?
They are the most frequent team we have faced in the FA Cup.
It's ridiculous.
Yeah, it's weird.
So boring.
I mean, I guess there's a logic, like, right, they're often in the FA Cup and they're often going far. But, like, it's not going to be Crawley, right?
Yeah.
It's always going to be a big-ish team that eventually knocks you out. So there's some logic there, but it is weird. Like, I can barely remember when we've played that lot up the road.
Yeah.
In the FA Cup, other than the semi.
Like, it's just like,
yeah. Why is it always them?
Because like I'd sort of understand it if we were a consistently good FA Cup side, and as you get later down the competition, you are more likely to pull teams like Manchester United because in general they've got a fantastic history in the FA Cup, but we consistently get knocked out in the 3rd or 4th round. So the fact that we keep on getting them in the FA Cup feels really odd to me. Yeah. Them and I think someone put some numbers out. I can't remember what they were, but the amount of times we've pulled them and City in the past 20 years is just. I mean, it is ultimately horrific luck, but it feels like a conspiracy, Sammy.
Yeah. Draw was rigged. Warm balls. The FA putting its reputation on the line just so that Fulham can get Manchester United once again. Sam Purcell, changing the subject slightly, wants to talk about the Ali Mack situation. Says, hi Fulhamish, question for the pod. No great fan of Ali Mack here, but do we want to put the question to you about who holds blame for the ticketing? The fan base has determined to blame Alistair Mackintosh, but he was also responsible for things like Kids for a Quid and the cheap tickets in the Europa League. Could it be that he simply follows orders from the top? I think the Khans and Mark Lamping are responsible. Mark Lamping is part of the Khans team. Not really sure where he fits into the organisation, but he's often been mentioned as a name. The introduction of dynamic pricing seems to be brought in from the NFL, and Lamping was brought in to lift ticket sales with previous history at the Jags. Mackintosh shows contempt for the FST, so I do understand the ire, but is the direction potentially short-sighted?
Is it right that he brought in the cheap ticket pricing? Because I'm pretty sure I know for a fact I started coming to Fulham before Alistair Mackintosh was CEO. And I was a beneficiary of cheap tickets for kids. That's how I ended up here. You know, it was, and I don't think that means it was. I don't think that was his initiative, which is a small point. It's a small point of that.
I think the thing is that we don't know who was responsible for things in the noughties.
Yeah,
we do know now that whatever he's been instructed from the top, I maintain that a CEO worth their salt tells the people above them if what they're doing is a mistake. Now, maybe he has. the way he talks to the FST doesn't suggest that he does.
I also think the chain of command, like the movement of this, goes in the other direction. Like, I don't think necessarily Alistair Mackintosh is the one standing there and telling the people who are in charge of working out all of the numbers on what ticket pricing should be. He's not saying the ticket should be this much. They're presenting to him what they think he wants to see. So we set the prices at this level, it will bring in this amount of revenue. He then okays that. That is his decision. And he will take that to the Khans, presumably.
Yeah.
But he is that first approval step. So if he had anything about him and he actually cared, he's the first person who's able to action a change. So it doesn't really matter if you say, oh, is it this person who's... like, as the CEO, it goes through him. And so either he doesn't care or he doesn't have a backbone. Either way, it's the same result of a weak CEO who doesn't care about the fans. And he ultimately does call those shots. And if he was presenting the prices to the Khans and saying, oh, I think we should drop them, and they were saying no, that'd be something different. But we know that's not happening.
Yeah.
There's no way that this discourse and the conversations that happen with the FST happen in the way they do if he was high ticket prices.
Yeah. I've publicly criticised Alistair Mackintosh, and broadly people are supportive. We're gonna try and get Joe Gunning on the podcast, by the way, next week, who was the person you might remember who filmed that video about ticket prices on X that we talked about. He's coming on the podcast next week, so we're going to do this in a little bit more detail then. But I think for me, it is a case that I do believe ultimately, yes, are the Khans responsible? Of course, they are in charge of the club. I do not believe they get involved in granular detail. I do believe that the instruction will be increase revenue, make us more financially stable. It is up to the people down at the club level how to do that. And they have the power, they just choose not to look at other ways of doing it. And so therefore, I think that the criticism that Alistair Mackintosh is getting, there were chants in the away end, you were there.
Yep.
I've only seen the videos, but it felt like it was not just...
It was 60-70% of the game.
Yeah.
And quite rightly so.
So I do believe that this criticism is justified. Yeah, of course, there is a bigger conversation about whether it's the Khans. But right now, I think the target that is on Alistair Mackintosh's back from the fan base is justified. And I believe that the way he has spoken to the Fulham Supporters Trust in particular is what has meant that this shift has happened. He didn't have to be like he was in those meetings and say the things he said. I think that's why a lot of heat is coming his way. As I say, we will go into this a little bit more next week. David Nicholson, enjoyed this one. He sent this last week, but he said, evening Fulhamish, looking forward to getting to the Wigan game this weekend. As an FFC fan based in the north, it's one of the grounds I've been waiting to get whilst living up here. Deeply confused about the Willian welcome video. Why was a big guy in a dodgy tracksuit given most of the airtime? Oh wait, it's Carlos Vinicius. And why does match winner Muniz walk in looking like the character played by Wesley Snipes in Demolition Man, one for the kids? Willian looked very confused. I really want him to be eligible on Saturday. It would be so funny to see him play a part. I thought he looked like a pensioner the last time he played for us, albeit one who can still do a job. Come on, you whites, from David. Sadly, he didn't play a part. Jack Kelly mentioned in the podcast that Willian probably would have come on if Fulham were more comfortable in the game, alas we weren't. I did enjoy the Willian welcome for what it's worth. Yeah. It was really nice just to kind of go around and everyone... He's a popular person in the club. And you know, me and Jack had that big discussion last week about whether he was like, well, we should have signed someone like Marcus Edwards. Don't necessarily fully disagree. Had a good debut.
Yep.
Did wince a little bit when I saw that one come in on Saturday. I was like, oh, damn it. Screw you, Jack. Marcus Edwards scoring on debut made me look like an idiot. But like it's immensely popular that he's back, and it does just seem to be one that might have lifted spirits a bit, if little else.
Yeah, there was a love. I think my favourite moment in the video was the embrace that Adama Traore gave him. It was one of the most tender hugs you will ever see. It was love, like it really lingered, and I think, but it is a sign of how popular he is, and also I think that mentor sort of role that he plays. He's got like that experience, won everything there is to win in club football, has done it all, has played multiple different countries. I think that level of expertise that he brings and is able to then share with the rest of the squad is something that happened over the past 2 years and would be good to see it come back again. And it seemed like the players were happy to see that. And it has felt, maybe not necessarily we're crying out for him in particular, but I said it when he was released at the end of last season. I think we will find a point in this season where we miss a player like him who is able to play off the wing and do something intelligent and unpick something. And it has felt like, I think both of us have been repeating the same line over and over this season. It feels like we're seeing the same Fulham game every week.
Yeah.
And someone like him is able to change that, I think. It's just whether he's still capable of doing it.
Yeah.
Is the question.
And I do think that Jack's point of like how much of an impact is he going to make, the fact that he's coming in, he's not 100% fit, and you're like, so when are we going to see him? Is it March? Is it April? Is it when our other players return? The fact that I kind of was hoping a little bit when we signed Willian that it was like, right, he's ready. I wasn't expecting him to do 90 against Wigan to be frank, but I am a bit surprised that, okay, we have signed someone and they're not immediately available. We are running shortish of games, and I don't know if it's worth re-signing Willian so that he can play the last 3 games of the season. Look, if we do go deep in the cup, if we do get past Manchester United, those fixtures are going to get a little bit more built up and a bit busier. Speaking of fixture build up and not getting busier, I'm very glad we're not playing Spurs next week. That was a good little one.
Yeah, I loved your spot that if they had won the Carabao Cup semi-final and we had lost to Wigan, we'd have had 1 game in March, which would have been an impressive achievement and is actually maybe sort of what we need.
Yeah.
1 game in March, and I think April suddenly we'd have our whole team back. It would be quite nice, actually.
Yeah, although we've been talking about how Fulham seem to have a bit of a hangover after the international break. How much of a hangover would we have if we'd have had a 3.5 week break?
Yeah, I'm glad that it's weird that as well when you look at that Spurs game, the fact that it can be brought forward so far, and obviously this has now happened to other teams. But I was just like, I hadn't even contemplated that you're looking at a game that's played in mid-March could potentially get shifted an entire month forward.
If you missed this, the Spurs game, had they got to the Carabao Cup final, which if you watched that semi-final was never in doubt, but it would have been a week on Wednesday, so it would have been the 19th of February. We'd have had 3 home games in a week as well. So I'm kind of glad that didn't happen.
I am glad. I think there's also the one element to it is that Spurs are still in the midst of this injury-stricken season that may be better striking now than you are in a month's time. But I think overall for us, the benefit is still big because we don't have enough bodies, and we need players to get up to fitness. We need players to come back from injury. So yeah, I'd rather not play another game in February.
And also, if you're going to the Spurs game, which is going to be moved to the Sunday because they're in the Europa League on the Thursday beforehand, we don't know the time yet. Assuming it's a 2:00 kickoff, which is what we're hoping for, there'll be a Fulhamish live show at the Half Moon Putney. So
can't wait.
If you're kind of making your weekend plans for that and you want to come to a Fulhamish live, maybe you've heard them and you've not come before, tickets aren't out or anything like that because we're literally waiting for the kickoff time. But we're hoping we'll be able to do a Fulhamish live afterwards, which will be extremely exciting. Final question from Jordan Harrison. This one was sent a few weeks ago, but I think still relevant now, and I wanted to address it. I think this is actually hilarious. He sent it, I've only just realised this, half time during the Newcastle game when a few of us had a few opinions that we maybe didn't have by full time. But yeah, this one was obviously very much sent in anger from Jordan.
I love that.
Hi guys, it's not even half time, but I'm already fuming as our biggest weakness has been exploited yet again. Castagne cannot play with Anderson as his right centre-back. Neither deserve to start on current form, but appreciate we have no right-back alternative. They are both poor in 1v1 duels, unless playing against Rasmus Højlund, and have no recovery place. So the million-dollar question is, why is Marco persisting with Anderson over Issa Diop? Keep up with the good work from Jordan.
I think we've been saying this as well. I said it after the Newcastle game. I don't think that pairing works of Castagne and Anderson because they've both shown that they're better players than they're currently showing when playing alongside someone else. Joachim Andersen alongside Kenny Tete was working really well. We were getting very excited. Things looked great. We're like, this guy has stepped up the level of our back line. Likewise, Castagne last season alongside Issa Diop for most of the season. Took Kenny Tete out of the team, and there weren't many calls for Kenny to come back into the team. But it's something about these two playing together just doesn't work.
No,
and I think it's probably the lack of pace in general, and also I think whilst Kenny Tete I don't think is massively quicker than Timothy Castagne, he is a better 1v1 defender, which means it's less of an issue. I think he's got more nous defensively. I think the reason why Anderson is still playing is ultimately Marco in himself knows that he's the better player. He is like pure objectively, I think Joachim Andersen is a better centre-back than Issa Diop and more dependable.
I think also the Wigan game maybe showed us that Issa Diop doesn't necessarily cure all of Timothy Castagne's ills. Because I think the thing with Castagne at the moment, I can't work it out, he looks knackered.
Yeah.
He just, maybe a bit of like lack of confidence. Like it's just like he's been through the ringer a little bit in the past month. He just looks a little bit like slightly terrified. And I feel like we know that Timothy Castagne's good because he was good last year. He had, he made a glaring mistake in the Carabao Cup semi-final, but I can't think of too many others than that. He was solid, he was dependable, and he got forward well. Yeah. We know that Timothy Castagne's not gone anywhere. It's not like he's suddenly past it in terms of age. I just think that right now, even against Wigan, he just looked a bit like, oh my God, will his football ever end? And maybe it's the pressure from his side as well, knowing that there isn't a backup to him as well. Maybe it's that kind of element of like, if I get crocked here or whatever, I've got to play every game as well. I'm not getting a rest. In some ways, I looked at the Wigan game and thought, like, is he not the person that needed the rest almost the most? Could we not have found a makeshift right back?
But who? Like, that's like, who would it have been?
Well, unless you went kind of rogue and put in someone like, I guess you could say Anderson, but then Anderson's not getting a rest. Or
like, I think probably most people would maybe, just based on the way they play, so I think I've seen people toss about Harrison Reed as a potential option, just because he's a bit of a terrier. I don't necessarily think he's that well suited to it, but by the by, someone else would then have to play in the middle of the park, and we don't have someone else to play in the middle. So like, I just don't know how you work that. This won't have come across on the telly, but there were a couple of times groans towards Timothy Castagne and his performance against Wigan. There was times when a winger or an overlapping fullback would shape to cross the ball in, cut back inside, would sell Castagne completely. Defensively, he's instilling no confidence, and going forward, I think that was the thing he was probably, for me, that nudged him ahead of Kenny Tete last season, was he was quite smart going forward. It wasn't just the one-dimensional run down the line. He was able to do both, this sort of underlap, overlap. I don't really see any of that. If anything, he's stopped contributing to the attack, and I don't know if that's tactical, but quite a lot of the time, if you watch this Fulham side, Anthony Robinson's given full licence to go up the left wing, and Timothy Castagne is the one who sort of tucks in, and you almost get that three at the back out of possession. And sometimes I think it really kills us because we'll look to shift the ball out. There'll be a big gaping hole where you want your right back bombing on. I don't know if that's Marco Silva. I don't know if that's a lack of confidence or a lack of legs from Castagne, if he doesn't think he's capable of doing that and then getting back.
Yeah.
But we've got to, I think we've got no other option. We've just sort of got to deal with it. We've got to hope that the second half performance that he put in against Newcastle was a bit more of a sign of things to come. Because I agree with it. Jordan, who asked that question, I agree that first half was bad. Like that, I just thought that was game done, because it just felt like Newcastle were going to be able to hit that line again and again and again, and there was nothing we could do about it. But I think as I said, I think Marco's taking that line of Joachim Andersen is the one I trust most. Castagne's the only right back I've got. What else do you do? And I agree that Issa Diop, I thought he looked good. I thought he did fine against Wigan. I thought he put in a very solid performance. I don't think he was tested a huge amount. But again, it reared its head, that one Issa Diop moment that comes most games. We got away with it against Wigan. It was a great recovery tackle from Jorge Cuenca, gets us out of jail. If that happened against Forest, I guarantee you Chris Wood kills that ball first time, rolls it into the back of the net. and they score. And so I think I still don't know how much Marco trusts this, which is a shame because I really like him and he's got that maverick in him, which maybe isn't what you want from your centre back, but I think he always performs admirably.
Yeah, as do I. I think that Issa's few mistakes do get spotlighted and seem to just get spotlighted a little bit more than someone like Anderson's mistakes. I don't know why. Maybe they're a bit more glaring the way that they happen. Maybe they just look a bit more comical than Anderson's mistakes, which are sometimes just a bit of poor positioning.
I think fans also just never really Issa wasn't someone we wanted from like the very beginning. It felt
because he came with a baggage from West Ham, didn't he?
It felt like he came to this Fulham side and was having to prove himself straight away. And we've had players like that where the scrutiny is so high, and it's like anything they do gets laser focused from the fan base. And I think this has unfortunately been one of those players whereas Anderson, you can hear it sort of starting to bubble, the fan opinion towards him just dropping, but he had so much credit in the bank just by virtue of being good for us previously.
Yeah,
that when that signing came in, everyone was pro Anderson. Mistakes happen, but look what he does. Whereas with his Diop, it's more like, oh, well, this is what you always get from Diop.
Yeah. Before we go, I'm going to put you on the spot. I didn't give you any warning to this.
Oh God!
But as you're here on the Thursday Club, in terms of where Fulham finish and get into in the FA Cup, I would like a head versus heart prediction. So let's start with head. Where do we finish in the league?
I think, given where our squad is at in terms of injuries, I think, and where other teams are in the league, I think we miss Europe. I'm going to say 10th.
Okay. FA Cup, head.
Knocked out in the 5th round. Sorry.
Okay.
Heart
League.
Heart League, our players, in theory, if we can get through this run, are coming back from injury at a period of time where Fulham, historically under Marco Silva, have been rubbish because we've been just easing off the gas. Heart says we maybe hit a really great run of form when those players come back in, and it could be quite exciting. And I think 8th is up for grabs, and 8th could be enough.
So 8th is Heart.
8th is Heart.
And where do we get in the FA Cup? Heart.
I'm very excited that we could get to Wembley. I don't know if that means the final, but I think if we beat United, it all hinges on that quarter-final tie. But I still think that all of the teams left in that competition now, Fulham have shown the ability to beat all of them.
So we're going to say a trip to Wembley is your Heart.
Yeah. But like even if we beat United and we pulled City, we showed enough this season to say that we could beat Manchester City. And yeah, maybe it would be on penalties, but we could.
Yeah.
Whereas, like, if we had got, if we got Liverpool away, but we got a result at Liverpool away. So, I think we are a good cup team, and I think we could get to Wembley.
There we go.
What's yours? I want to know yours.
Oh, okay.
Because I feel like you're more of an optimist than me sometimes.
Head, I think, is 10th for the league. Weirdly, I think the easy option for head for FA Cup is to lose to United. But my head says possibly, actually, weirdly, it could be somewhere in the middle of like quarterfinals, which would be almost more annoying if you've got past United and then lose to Villa. Is probably my head. Heart actually is 7th.
7th.
Which I know could be even more than we need for that could be Europa League, let alone Europa Conference League. And Heart also says final. There feels something serendipitous about the 50 years since 75.
Yeah.
It feels that's like something where and wouldn't it be almost more serendipitous to lose in the bloody final?
Yeah. Again, that would be Fulham. You know what? And I wouldn't hate it.
I just want a final. I just want an FA Cup final. I want to sing "Abide with Me."
As someone who, as someone who,
that's the big thing. Abide with me.
as someone who lives in Wembley Park, who gets off at Wembley Park tube station every single day, I'm waiting for the moment that Fulham play at Wembley since I've lived there. I moved there 2 years ago. I thought at one point that we were going to do it in the FA Cup. I thought last season we were going to do it in the Carabao Cup. And I cannot wait
for the party at Dan Cooke's.
For the party at Dan Cooke's. And the fact that I wouldn't have to do that stupid pissing queue down Wembley Way after we lose in the FA Cup semi-final. I could just walk home.
They're the two things I'm most looking forward to of an FA Cup final. Abide with me and the party at Dan Cooke's. Before and after. Here we go. Dan, thank you for coming on Thursday Club today.
Pleasure. Loved it.
Fulhamish will be back on Monday. We'll be looking and reviewing the Forest game. Fingers crossed we can come out on the right side of that particular chess match. Thank you for listening. Thank you for watching. And we'll be back next week. Come on, you Whites.